Mr. Renacci, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all the witnesses and thank you for all your testimony. It's interesting because prior to coming to Congress, I was a CPA and was brought into businesses in many cases that were failing. And when you looked at their failures, it was many times the owners would say, well, you know, we were doing fine and we shouldn't touch anything and we shouldn't have done anything, and what they really ignored was the trend and the future. And so I'm appreciative that we're looking at the trends in the future here, because that's the key. We can sit and just bury our head, but the trends are showing that we've got some problems. Mr. Stero, you made a comment where either there's two sides. You're either for the box or against the box. It's kind of interesting because I would agree that some people, when you say something, they say you're against the box, you're for the box. So I think everybody up here is for making sure Social Security is solvent for the future. I know as a father of 3 children, I want to make sure that the benefits are available to them too. So when I look at things, I try and look at systemic issues. And I'd like to ask, in reading your testimony, I see a couple things that have been brought out of your testimonies, especially several of you. The system does not encourage savings, our current system. And the other thing is the system encourages retirement before the national retirement age. Those seem to be two real systemic problems within the current system, which aren't benefits, aren't revenue raisers, aren't any of those. These are actual systemic problems that, you know, I'd like Mr. Sterrell, Mr. Fichtner, if you could address, you know, what are some of the ways Congress and even the Social Security Administration can incentivize savings, and also we can encourage older Americans to remain in the workforce? So I'd start with Mr. Sterrell.
I have a number of suggestions in my testimony. I won't go into all the details, but the basic suggestions are to bump up the retirement age. As it actually turns out that I would also increase the early retirement age, because it actually turns out that the people who are hurt the worst are the low-income people who can work but don't. That is, their proportional loss in income over their retirement is actually worse than it is for higher-income people who might have capital income on the side. And then, as I say, I would try to then make a lot of other adjustments to make sure that that net change is more progressive. I would try to backload benefits more. That is, to the extent that we can make it more of an old age system rather than a system that's really a middle age retirement system. That's going to encourage work by not providing so much in the way of benefits up front. I would also offer people partial retirement options that Social Security doesn't offer, so that people don't have to think it's an all or nothing choice, which many of them do. On the savings front, I've suggested a number of times that we follow Britain's example when they did Social Security reform, and we back up Social Security reform with a private pension reform that's aimed, by the way, at providing substantial coverage for the vast majority of people who get very little in private retirement benefits.
Before I move to Mr. Fichtner, I would just ask you this question. Instead of raising the rate, raising the age, shouldn't we, how about changing the system so people, I have friends back home that are retiring because it makes no sense for them, if they work longer, they don't get any additional benefit, and at the same time, there's no incentive to continue to work because they get their retirement benefits cut if they do, and they can't work and get those benefits.
The current system has something called an earnings test, which technically doesn't reduce benefits, but people think of it as a huge tax rate on their benefits, because technically what happens when those benefits get reduced, Social Security gives them an actuarial adjustment for higher benefits later. I want to make that explicit. They recognize by working longer that they could make that work to their advantage in a much more explicit way. But also, the suggestion I made, and I think Mr. Fichtner made, to actually drop this notion of only counting 35 years of work means if I work more than 35 years, I work past 62, that can also add to my benefits. So I make a number of adjustments along those lines.
Mr. Fichtner.
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I realize your time is short, so I will second everything that Dr. Sterling said, and then to sort of add what can the Social Security Administration do to help encourage people to maybe delay claiming, because those who take early retirement basically are behind, but their monthly benefit is lower than they would otherwise be. When they get into their 80s or 90s, then behind for the rest of their lives. Part of this is better financial literacy, with both the commission plans actually endorse, which would be to show the benefits and the risks and costs of claiming early versus claiming later. And I think we should look at raising the early retirement age. Right now, as we said, 40% take it at 62, 70% are taking it before the normal retirement age. That means that is actually increasing poverty in older ages. If we increased it but did like a hardship benefit or a special minimum benefit bump up, that would keep lower people out of poverty but still give the incentive for those to continue work.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. T.